Heavenly restriction, known as the breakers of fate, are anomalies in the Jujutsu society, and in specific of Maki and Toji, are those who have broken free from cursed energy. Mekamaru unfortunately gets the short end of the stick, with his HR ability being far less desirable and a payoff that is not comparable to the likes of Maki and Toji. But their issue with heavenly restriction lies with how they are viewed in story in regards to their contemporaries and us in the audience, in regards to how they fit into the power system. This video will target the in-world perception and the audience perception of HR in regards to power scaling and just regular narrative portrayal. Toji, being deemed a black sheep by the Zenin clan, failed to recognize the true strength of the heavenly restriction due to not having cursed energy. Scrutiny on the usage of curse tools meant he did not fit the criteria to be deemed strong, as they don't fit what cultivates their very strength, cursed energy. But in hindsight, heavenly restriction provides benefits beyond the power system, with being able to wield curse tools that are beyond broken, and being immune to the pinnacle of Jujutsu domain expansions. They are the glitch in the system, and it is why the quote from Naoya's fight with Maki encapsulates Jujutsu's worldview of heavenly restriction. The sin of the insignificant is ignorance of strength. This quote is then added by the viewpoint that suggests that only the pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery has an idea of the true strength of HR, and even with Naoya's dick riding, his admiration comes from a space of entitlement that is his birthright, that he is on the level of the strongest. Now, to build up on that, I've highlighted the worldview problem of heavenly restriction, which can be summarized by them not having cursed energy, leads them to not being validated in their strength. This is important and will lead later to audience viewpoint on heavenly restriction as well, but to boost why we have a HR problem, there's also others who seem to realize that heavenly restriction is far more special than we thought. Yuki, a character taken too quickly from us, but she's the first in the Jujutsu world to see HR for more than it's worth. Her goal of breaking free from cursed energy perfectly aligns in her respecting the beauty of heavenly restriction. She tells Geto to not be surprised of his defeat as they are deemed superhuman. But all in all, the importance aligns in being the real first in-universe view of HR being acknowledged, and how special it is to see the case like Toji, who Yuki stated was the first they seen in the world. Now, I've already covered #1 Toji fanboy Naoya, but even Ogi's PTSD to seeing Maki and reminiscing to Toji showcases Ogi, even with all his ignorance, could not shake the fear of seeing a HR user again. Moreover, this aligns nicely to one of the best panels of Momo talking about Maki and how she's become a monster. The reputation of heavenly restriction is slowly changing, but it also isn't ironic that it comes from people who reject the current way the Jujutsu world is ran. Yuki wants to change it to prevent the cycle of curses. Momo highlighted the unfair treatment of women in the Jujutsu society, and the current HR user Maki is a person who has changed their own destiny by 1. Going against a family who causes such harm, and 2. Being the embodiment of freedom in Jujutsu Kaisen, being freed from cursed energy. Now, if we take the quote, Gojo was the only person to understand Toji, and his whole goal is to change the corrupt Jujutsu world, we can infer those who seek change understand the value of heavenly restriction. The narrative of heavenly restriction is changing in verse, but it begs the question, why is it not taken as serious by our main antagonist, and in particular Kenjaku? From the array of knowledge that Kenjaku has, it would not be outright impossible to think that he has knowledge on heavenly restriction in general, especially as he stated he coveted curse spirit manipulation from Geto, meaning he should have knowledge on what occurred in the hidden inventory arc. Moreover, his implied relationship with Tengen, and the fact Tengen was the first person to suggest heavenly restrictions are the breakers of fate. But in essence, I think it can be chalked up to it's the complete opposite of what Kenjaku's goal is, meaning he lacks the intrigue. Now, you're probably wondering why I brought up so many characters' opinions on heavenly restriction. Well, it fits the HR problem of confusion and being a literal glitch in the system. The narrative surrounding them is never clear cut and confusing for good measure, because it perfectly represents what HR beings are, an anomaly. A binding vow placed on the user at birth is extremely uncommon from what we've seen in Jujutsu Kaisen, and it further explains the mixed perception of heavenly restriction. It correlates nicely that the Jujutsu world does not know the true potential of heavenly restriction, and this could be seen in multiple series that something that strays away from the power system is met with contempt in the world view. Good example of this is Asa and anti-magic in a series where not having adequate amount of magic leads to discrimination. Asa's usage of anti-magic has allowed him to eventually gain respect in verse, and people finally seeing the benefit of his abilities. In a similar manner, HR has received similar change of point of view. This, in my opinion, and I'll emphasize my opinion, sets up Maki to have a significant role in the conclusion of JJK, whether that is the world being free from cursed energy or being another breaker as fate, as the narrative emphasis on HR has been consistent to be a wild card in the series. Now to tackle the problem that causes the most discourse in terms of heavenly restrictions, and is in regard to power scaling. I wanted to highlight both narrative and power scaling as they are important to JJK's plot, but this is the section where I see a lot of mixed opinions. Depending on who you talk to, people say Maki and Toji are top 5 easily, and others will debate that they're barely in the top 10. One thing that was a key debate in the community was whether Maki and Toji are immune to domain expansions. I for one was a person who believed they were affected, and I was later proved very wrong. The importance of me bringing that up is there seems to be a low-key downplay on heavenly restriction, yet as more information is revealed to us in the story, more times than not it seems to go in heavenly restriction's favour. Narratively, they've been portrayed as the peak of humanity in terms of physical abilities, in tandem with their 5 senses being enhanced to essentially have precognition and to see curses. On the other hand, the argument can be made that other non-HR users have feats that contrast narrative implications, that they are not the pinnacle in certain stats, whether that is speed, reactions or durability. I'm not going to go in depth with them because ain't nobody got time for that, but in conclusion there is a huge ambiguity when coming to how strong HR really is. Nevertheless, the ambiguity resides in the problem with HR, and in my opinion, that is the point. In a bigger sample size, these arguments can be made for a lot of characters, especially as Jujutsu Kaisen is a very matchup driven series. But to come back to my main point, this lies in the beauty of HR, is that it can be interpreted either way. A series that is already ambiguous in nature with who beats who is even more so with a walking anomaly in the power system being HR. And I feel as if Gege has designed it purposely for that reason. More so than that, HR gets the added bonus of whether you think a character is conventionally stronger than them, it does not rule them out of a key role in the fight due to them being glitches in the system. This all correlates with the problem of HR in a power scaling sense, as their main abilities are very difficult to compare to their main cast due to not having curse energy, meaning things we value as a peak of Jujutsu, reverse curse technique, domain expansion, great curse energy control, high output, and a great curse technique all don't apply, and it's why HR becomes even more special. Heavenly restriction has been designed to be the jack of all trades, and even more so than any other power up in the series, but also means it can be met with huge contempt as well. The problem itself is the solution, and the solution is it comes down to interpretation. There is no defining factor on how strong HR is currently till Gege shows us more. But the beauty of it compared to any other sorcerer, it's the one with the biggest disparity in strength based on audience opinions. Funnily enough, that is represented of the world view of HR, as because it's not a conventional power in the system, it can be misinterpreted, misunderstood, underrated or even overrated. And the beauty of it is its power is decided by the user who views it. I think HR is an amazing concept in Jujutsu Kaisen because it's the one with the most room for interpretation, but more times than not, having big stocks and heavenly restriction seems to pay off. More than that, it's the embodiment of freedom from a power system that is a never-ending cycle of pointless fights, because in the end of the cycle, curses will never stop. Heavenly restriction gives us an opportunity to explore something far beyond the system, but it's also met with the HR problem of its worth sometimes never truly being seen by the audience or Jujutsu world viewpoint. In the words of Max Kellerman, if the Martians pull up and point the death beam at the world and you need someone to save us all, bets on heavenly restriction. I'm trolling, bet on Hikari.